Hello.
Good evening, Christian. How are you doing?
Good, good. Is that Khalid?
Yes.
Okay, great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm hoping you're well as well.
Yeah, yes, I'm good. I'm coming back from the laundromat, so you guys will have to bear with me for a few minutes, but
Nice.
I'm
Okay.
doing well. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
Is this the team from Transportation Alternatives?
Yes, John and I are here from, we're from the Off the Streets for People, which is local volunteers working with transportation alternatives. Yeah.
Oh, great. Jeff, nice to meet you. John, thanks for joining as well. And Barnabas, is that also from Transportation Alternatives?
No, I just live in CB9.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm just a resident of CB9.
Oh, okay, great. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining. How's everybody doing so far this evening?
It's a beautiful day today. Got out to the park a little bit.
Jeff, I heard you say you guys are volunteers.
Yes, so we are, I think we'll introduce ourselves formally in a second, but yes, we are all folks from around the community who met in various ways, noticing each other community board meetings when we're talking about transportation, things like that. And so Transalt gives us support for campaigns to improve transportation and street sort of facilities around the city. So they help us a lot with the organization. And
is my camera? Hello? This is Teresa. Can you hear me or see me?
Teresa, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
How do I turn on the camera? Wait.
Are you operating from your cell phone?
Yeah, I got it. I'm just not used to this.
It's okay. Thank you for joining. And that's really cool to hear that you're all volunteering. That's great work. I see Corazon is in the house. Corazon, welcome. Corazon, can you hear me? Or us? Teresa, can you tell me which committee members are on? I can't really see on my phone. I'm going to log on.
I'm on my phone too. It's a little weird this time. I see Fred Baptiste is here. I see Tori Boggs, Barnum. I don't see Matthew is here. MP, I'm not sure who that is. Francisco. The only members I see is you and I and Matthew so far. I'm not sure who MP is. There's one with MP.
Okay. I know, and welcome, Chair. Welcome, Fred. Thank you for joining. That's great. I know that Kendall is going to be running 10 minutes late. Martina might be a little bit late, and also Charlita. Is Matt on?
Matt, I saw.
I'm
Yeah.
here, yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Well, just bear with me one more minute. I will have to run back out to move my laundry around, but thank you for joining. I will join via computer in just a few seconds here.
Question: why is this transportation alternative project being presented at the environmental committee as opposed to transportation?
I'm sorry, thank you for the question. May I ask who's speaking?
This is Barnabas. My apologies.
Hi, Barnabas, welcome. So Transportation Alternatives have spoken recently at a committee, a transportation committee event. I believe it was for CB14, but we invited them because the work that they're doing has implications for environmental protections when you're talking about pollution on Flatbush Avenue. Thank you, Fred. Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, with no further ado, let's just jump into it. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening. This is the Environmental Protection Committee meeting. We have a little bit of a full agenda today, which is great. We also have a hard stop at 8:30, so we're going to dive right in. And we will start with starting the meeting at 7:06 for Matt, our note taker. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And first, just ask if there are any changes to the minutes from last month.
No changes as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Did we get sent a copy?
Well, the copies, yeah, I believe it was sent. It's also on the CB9 website.
Okay.
Okay, so with no changes then to the minutes, we will move into the next agenda topic, which is just, we always start off our meetings for those who are new or for those who it's your first time in a long time, welcome back. We like to start off our meetings just with a reminder that we may not always agree on how we see things in our community, but we're going to maintain respect. And secondly, we have some of us that we tend to be in the front and take up space. And this is a meeting really for those in the front to take a step back and to listen, and for those that are in the back to take a step forward. And we welcome your participation. So we want to make sure that we're inclusive in this meeting. That's one of our meeting norms. The other part of this agenda, item number 1, is announcements. So I just want to note right off the top, and we can delve into this. I think the best time to delve into this is after the transportation alternatives presentation, because I want to be mindful and respectful of their time. But I did just want to note for the committee that I applied for, you may remember in January, I applied for the Citizens Committee of New York City micro grant, and they don't really fund community boards. They fund organizations affiliated with community boards or nonprofits or block associations. So I was able to apply for a grant meeting the guidelines that they laid out. And I found out earlier this week that we were awarded a grant for $2,500, which is great news. And we had 3 things that I put forth, and I worked on this with Martina. And we had 3 things that we put forth in that grant. One was to activate a green space in our district that is currently being used for dumping. The second thing was to contribute to an Environmental Protection Committee fair. I see Martina's about to join, which is great. The second thing was to contribute to Environmental Protection Committee fair, but that was in January, and we've since decided to join the CB9 wide fair. And then the third thing was to use the money for to help contribute if CB9 was going to be able to. I see Nicolas there. That's great. If CB9 was going to be able to fund the replacement of 10 trash receptacles, then part of our micro grant in the proposal we included that we would help contribute to the funding of those trash receptacles. So 2,500 sounds like a lot. It's not that much, but it's something. And I would love to revisit this at the end of the meeting. But for now, I just want to mention that as part of our announcements. We'll take questions on that later on after Transportation Alternatives gives their presentation. Agenda topic number 2, review of previous action items. So the main previous action item was for me to follow up with our district manager and chair regarding the letter to council persons. And with great thanks and much appreciation, that letter was finalized. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Khalid. We really appreciate it. You have no idea. The committee worked super hard on the letter over the course of many meetings. And so to have your partnership on this and have you finalize it for us is really, really appreciated. And I think it's timely as well, as budget negotiations are starting, to send it to council members. So hopefully we can get a response back from them and start the conversation. So that was the only previous action item. That brings us to agenda point number 3, which is the letter to council persons, which I just covered. So I gave an update on that. And the 10 locations for trash cans, that's an ongoing conversation. My understanding is that from talking to the district manager that the community board is looking to find sponsors for the CB9 wide fair. And if there's a possibility of finding sponsorships and finding resources to help cover the fair, then there may be some funding left over at the end of the month to fund part of these trash cans. And as I mentioned earlier, now that we have this small pot of money, we had originally contributed to that or asked for that, put in that request with the idea that we could help contribute to CB9's funding of these trash receptacles. So I'll stop there. Fred, I see your hand is raised. I'll stop there. That also concludes the first 3 agenda items, and which brings us to agenda item 4, which is a presentation from Transportation Alternatives and the Q&A. But before we go to that, I turn the floor over to the chair. And also, as part of our meeting norms, for those who this is your first time or first time in a long time, we do ask that you raise your hand. It just makes it easier to manage the meeting. So chair, thank you for raising your hand. The floor is yours.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me, and I'll try and be very brief as well. I respect everyone's time. First of all, but I did want to say thank you to the chair, to this committee, for all the hard work you have done in terms of generating the recommendations, doing the legwork, identifying the locations, and crafting the letter. So I think that was really an example of the kinds of things that we're looking to come from the committees, in terms of identifying the issues, developing those recommendations, and bringing those to the board. Very quickly, so with respect to the budgeting of the cans, so we are definitely still in conversations. So this is something that we're bringing to our local council members. We're identifying outside groups as well who do fund these things. So we're just trying to make sure that we're able to fund, see if we can do this. And I just wanted to make the commitment that, it's not a dead letter that, we throw up our hands and say, yay, we wrote the letter. So definitely going to be additional conversations coming down the pipe. We're making sure that we're going to have conversations with the local council members, the electeds, making sure that people are accountable. And when we don't see the things done that we've asked for, we are going to make sure that we ask even more forcefully. These don't go away. These will be reoccurring priorities that we're going to make sure we chase down and get answers for. But again, I just wanted to conclude very quickly and say thank you very much for all of your work. And we're going to provide updates as we have as we make movement, as we have any movement on the items that you recommended.
Thank you so much, Chair. Appreciate that. I see a committee member, Kendall.
Hi, sorry to be late in joining. Just quickly, I listened into the council's budget hearing today with sanitation, and the first 3 issues were street baskets, and street baskets. So there's still a lot of negotiation going on about more frequent service, all that sort of stuff. So stay tuned, keep an eye on that, Fred, and hopefully we'll get a better outcome with that. The second thing I want to mention from that hearing is the alternate side of the street parking. And Chris, I don't know if that's on the agenda or not, but just quickly, Councilmember Hudson raised the question for the commissioner of, can ASP be reconsidered in certain streets? And the commissioner made a very strong pitch for restoring ASP as their best tool for keeping the streets clean, but also said that they are always open to reconsideration where communities, neighborhoods, whatever else want to sort of start that process. But it's not a quick one. It will take some work, but at least she left the door open a little bit for that reconsideration. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kendall, for being our eyes and ears. You're always sending out newsletters and tips and keeping us informed, and it's very much appreciated. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, with that being said, I'd love to turn the floor over to Transportation Alternatives. We have a few volunteers who have generously joined us this evening to share about their work. And so with that, I will turn it over to you all. You'll have about 30 minutes, and that includes Q&A.
Hi. Yeah, we're going to try to keep our presentation on the shorter side so there's more time for you to ask us any sort of questions you have. Let me share my screen. Oh, I apparently cannot share unless I'm host, co-host, or presenter.
Khalid, is that something that you can help us with? While we're working on that, I may have to go off camera to pick up my laundry, so I apologize. May I also ask, who is MP?
Hi, how are you? My name is Michelle. I am with the Flatbush Streets for People. I own a store, so I wasn't able to chime in, and then I didn't want to chime in out of tune.
Okay, no worries. Welcome. Thank you, Michelle.
That's all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you for the email too to let me know about this meeting tonight.
Sure. Are you able to present, Liz?
It still hasn't changed that information. Still got the same error.
What do you think, Khalid?
Liz, do you want to try now? It made you co-host. See if you can share your screen.
Looks like it's starting to work. Thanks so much. Sorry for the slowdown there. All right, where's the present button? Perfect. Okay, I think you can all see my screen, right? All right, fantastic. Thank you so much again for giving us the opportunity to present here. I'm Liz Denny's, and I'm one of the volunteer leaders for Flatbush Streets for People. We're a neighbor-led grassroots campaign for safer streets and better buses in Flatbush, East Flatbush, Midwood, and Kensington. And we get support from Transportation Alternatives Volunteer Brooklyn Activist Committee. We are all volunteer group formed around rising traffic violence and public transportation issues in our neighborhoods. Just this year through April, 4 pedestrians have died in crashes in Flatbush, East Flatbush, Midwood, and Kensington, and our neighborhoods have been the site of 51 severe bicyclist injuries, 168 severe pedestrian injuries. These are only the ones that are severe enough to be reported to police. The past 10 years, our neighborhoods have been the site of 11 bicyclist deaths, 52 pedestrian deaths, over 2,300 bicyclist severe injuries, and 5,800 pedestrian injuries. We meet every other Tuesday on Zoom, and we also engage with staff from CM Joseph and CM Lewis's office at these meetings. Our campaign name is Flatbush Streets for People because we're concerned about making sure that our streets work for everyone and for generations to come. We mostly walk to get around within our neighborhoods, and we depend on buses throughout the city. Some of us have been hit by cars, some of us bike, and some of us drive, and we've noticed that some of these modes are a little easier to get around and safer and more reliable than others. While our meetings are focused around transportation and safety issues, we also regularly touch on environmental issues like pollution, storm resilience, and climate change. And so part of what we say when we're talking about streets for people is not just making them work now, but making them more climate resilient. And just before we get to that a little bit more, I just wanted to give a little bit more of an inspiration for what we mean by streets for people. We want it to be safe and easy to walk around. You shouldn't have to like zigzag with your stroller or your wheelchair through a crosswalk to cross the street. There's a lot of pedestrian improvements that can be made to help improve pedestrian safety. We don't want sidewalks to keep getting excessively flooded. This is particularly difficult if you're, again, pushing strollers or have a mobility aid. But storms are unfortunately a reality. of our climate and our environment, and flooding is a reality of our neighborhoods. We also want the bus to be more reliable and faster, and make it easier to get off on the side of the street where you're supposed to, or at a bus island. And finally, we are kind of the last other thing we're sort of advocating for on a broad sense is just a connected, safe bike lane network, so that people who are biking don't have to weave dangerously in and out of car lanes with lots of, with cars going, much heavier cars going faster than they're able to go, to, really improve safety for people biking. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jeffrey to talk more about how Streets for People will help encourage people to switch to more sustainable transportation modes.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Thomas. I'm another volunteer with Flatbush Streets for People. I live a couple blocks from CD9. And safe and effective street design, which is basically our two goals, for every mode leads to more people choosing greener transportation, most directly the way that we help the environment. The top complaints we hear about the bus, these two quotes on the slide are people I've talked to campaigning. I just didn't set out to get them. Just people are talking to me and I thought they're important. I wrote them down. The common complaints we hear about the bus are slow speeds and reliability issues. If buses were faster and more reliable, more people would be able to rely on them to get around our neighborhood and the city. And Community District 9, and not picking on CD9, because like Flatbush, like our CD, and nearby CDs, got a bus turnaround grade of D for poor service in terms of speed and reliability. 146,000 weekday riders depend on these buses, but the bus speeds are only a little bit faster than a jogger at 5.9 miles an hour. High frequency buses are often bunched together, and lower frequency buses arrive late, all amounting to people deciding not to take the buses. And on biking, the overwhelming majority of people who don't bike but tell us they want to bike cite safety as the biggest issue. And I hear this so much. People say, I'd like to bike. We don't need to convince people of the merits of biking. They say, I want to bike. I just think it needs to be safer. If they didn't have to bike dangerously close to cars, they would love to bike to get around Brooklyn and the New York City at large. And Flatbush and nearby neighborhoods currently have no protected bike lanes outside of Prospect Park. And on the next slide, unfortunately, flooding is a reality of streets in Flatbush and nearby neighborhoods. Their once-in-a-lifetime storms have been occurring a little more often. And as we mentioned earlier, the flooding tends to pull around crosswalks, which makes it harder for people to walk around during rainstorms, especially for disabled neighbors using wheelchairs and other mobility aids, parents pushing strollers, and so forth. Continuous sidewalks, standard DOT street design technique, they call them raised crosswalks or raised intersections, and other similar interventions can help make sure it's easy for everyone to cross the street, even during heavy rainstorms, which are both increasingly common and increasingly severe, slow down cars a little bit, make it safer for everyone. And we know that improving our streets to make it easier to choose active and public transportation usage is really important to protecting the environment. On the next slide, because air pollution is also a big problem in New York City. 96% of transportation air pollution in New York City comes from cars and trucks. This graph is from an NYC City published study on greenhouse gas emissions. And that is a whopping 29% of all air pollution produced in the city. Replacing car trips with the greener modes can make a big dent on reducing air pollution overall. And by the way, making it easier for people to unload and load instead of idling while double parked, like the photo on the right, which I took a couple weeks ago, by adding loading zones would not just make streets safer for people walking and biking because the streets are flowing more like people expect, but reducing idling would also help reduce pollution further. And this pollution causes asthma, low birth weight, respiratory disease, cardiovascular disease, developmental delays. In New York City, more than 1 in 10 children have asthma. In South Crown Heights and Lefferts Gardens, the CD9, the rate of child asthma hospitalizations is 42 in 10,000 kids ages 5 to 14, which is higher than both the Brooklyn average and the city average. Adult asthma hospitalization rates are also higher in CD9 than both the Brooklyn city averages, and nearby community districts and neighborhoods show similar trends. So better street design that encourages greener modes of transportation will help us reduce pollution and improve the health of our communities' environments. And I'm going to hand it off to John to talk more about how better street design protects the environment directly too.
Hey everyone, I'm John Pouliot. I live in CB14, but I work on Classen and Dean, in between Dean and Bergen. So I am a CD9 person as well. So one of the other things we want to do is making sidewalks more pleasant for people. Better street design with green elements helps the environments. And if you look at this picture, you can see bioswales and plantings, sidewalk plantings, and they can absorb stormwater and even filter the so-called first foul flush, which is a term that a lot of you are probably familiar with, which means like car oil, dust, and all of that before it kind of gets flushed into the water. If you look on the right of the screen, the low plantings act as curb extensions, which helps people see pedestrians in the crosswalk, and it reduces the amount of time you're in the middle of the street crossing the street and discourages high-speed turns. And because just like in Flatbush, flooding is a big problem in CD9. I think we all recently remember the last couple storms that brought a lot of flooding to the park and to the subway, the Prospect Park subway station. Stuff like this helps take water that is just running down the street to the lowest point and can absorb it more naturally. So let's go to the next one. And so this also combats climate change. We know that climate change is happening, heat waves are increasing, and I'm sure everybody here knows about this, but urban heat islands are an area where their built up areas are even warmer than the natural environment. So 1 to 7 degrees warmer. So if it's 100 degrees on the weather app, it could be 107 on the street. So we know that this is worse in moderately urbanized areas in the densest part of the city. The effect seems a little lower because of the shadows from tall buildings. So it's moderately dense areas like where a lot of us live. Trees and plants can have a really profound impact on reducing the heat island effect. So CD9 and CB14, I think, have about average access to parks and green spaces. CD9 definitely does. But other parts of our area have worse access to parks and green spaces in Flatbush. So increasing green elements, like you can see in this picture, flowers, trees, all of this stuff can have a really profound impact on the heat island effect. So it's simply not as hot. So one interesting thing that kind of couples with why this is at the environmental committee and not necessarily a transportation committee is that the heat island effect also seems worse on weekdays. And one of the main theories for that, researchers believe that it's caused by cars and their emissions. So street design that enables people not to have to drive around looking for parking all the time, not to have to drive around doing really short trips, in addition to being better for the planet, are better for our actual neighborhood. And saving just a couple of degrees, it might not seem like a big deal when we're just talking about it, but that can save a lot of lives. We found a quote, a research paper found, quote, all-cause mortality, which is every reason why people die, all-cause mortality of seniors aged 65 and over increased significantly in New York City during extremely hot days over 100. And we know we're going to have more and more of those. So everything we can do to keep our city just a couple of degrees warmer is going to save a lot of lives. And we believe this is a really effective way to do that. So the next slide that's what we have for you. And we wanted to open it up for questions, comments. Again, one thing to remember is we are just people who live around here. We are not paid. We are volunteers. We work here. We live here. We are just people in the neighborhood, and we want to work with community boards and community groups and everybody to hear concerns and make our communities better because we live here. So that's our point. So any questions, comments you guys would have, we'd love to chat. And thank you so much for inviting us to this meeting.
Thank you to all three of you for this presentation. It was really informative and brief, which is great because I think that allows for more time for Q&A. And it's clear that you're spending your time, volunteering your time to improve our community from a pollution perspective and to make mass transit be more accessible and more reliable, which is great. I'll open up the floor to questions as our friends from Transportation Alternatives said. If you have a question, please raise your hand. So I see, let's take 3. So I see Teresa 1, Matt 2, and then Barnabas 3, and then we'll take another a couple after that. So Teresa, start with you.
Hi, I just want to talk about the design of the bike lanes in particular. I'm a bicyclist and a driver and a dog walker and a parent. And I've been working on trying to get a clear bike path to the other side of the park because my child went to school there for middle school and elementary school over near like Winslow Terrace sort of area. And that never happened. And my kid is 17 now. So I've been working on that since she was 3. There is a bike lane on Parkside now, the 2-way bike lane that a lot of people are upset about actually. So because I think it'd be better if it was one way, but I don't think the community was interviewed about that. The other bike lane that design that's not so great is the Flatbush bike lane, which is there's a 2-way bike lane going down Flatbush on the side of the park. When that bike lane, which is a downhill bike lane, comes down Flatbush, it runs into Empire, Flatbush, and Ocean, and it runs into the path where people walk. It's directly goes, and a lot of the bicyclists come down quite fast, including myself, on electric bikes, and you're immediately funneled onto the sidewalk with nowhere to go. And I find it extremely dangerous, especially with that being an entrance to the children's, in the carousel, the zoo, and the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens children's entrance is there as well. So this is a very heavy traveled area for bicyclists. There's no lane that comes down Empire at all. So I walk there. I live in Crown Heights on the southern part near Ebbs Field. So I walk there like several times a day because I take my dog myself to the park. So I'm alarmed by that and how these designs were made and how that's made and what we can do to get a feeder for bicyclists for safety there, because it's extremely dangerous. And yeah, I don't know how that happened. And please, I'll do what I can to fix it. And the lane up, one more thing, Ocean would be terrific to have the access all around the park one way, because you can't go into the park and walk, like ride from our neighborhood over to the ball fields. It's impossible. It makes not a lot of sense. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
I'm happy to respond to that. Also, sorry, if you'd like me to raise my hand to get called on to reply, please let me know. I just wanted to say that, I think we really agree with you on all of this. I believe they didn't come to CB9 for the Parkside lane. I remember being at a CB14 meeting for it. I don't, it would be great if if DOT did more outreach for that. As we've talked about before, like we're a group of volunteers trying to improve street safety. We're not actually the people on the ground making these designs. That at the end of the day is DOT. And I just want to say, I think all of us and our campaign in general couldn't agree with you more on what you were saying about the lanes, right around Flatbush. The connection not existing from your neighborhood, down to the south side of the park, to the west side of the park. We really, really, really agree heartily that this is a problem, and that if we had better bike lanes that gave people enough space and gave people, gave everyone a dedicated spot for it, so that, bicyclists aren't coming to the end of a lane and having nowhere to go safely because cars are moving really quickly. And, to that end, we are more than happy to help work with CB9, work with other community boards, work, with other people in the area to push for better changes, including on improving connections, and just the implementation of existing bike lanes. I think we all agree that they're very narrow in a lot of these spots, and they really don't, a lot of them do let off into nowhere, and people don't, it's a lot of people trying to make good decisions and just not having really good options. And, I say that both as a cyclist and a pedestrian. I feel this from both sides of it all the time. And I really, really, really want it to be a lot easier for everyone. I'm super cautious about it, but I know it's just sometimes you get put in weird situations. So if there's anything we can do to like help bring more attention to some of those issues, like we would love to do so. We'd love to, we totally agree that it would be great if they connected in. We think it's a little silly that the park only has lanes that go in the other direction, the like kind of clockwise direction in like half the park, because that connectivity is really, really missing.
Thank you, Liz. That's helpful. Matt?
Thank you, Chris. I'm currently pushing a stroller on that clockwise road of the park. So lucky for it. First of all, I Transalton and Flatbush Streets for People. I see you guys on Bike Twitter all the time, and I love it. I'm a total convert. And second, a while back, I asked some friends of mine who in the city was really good at training organizers. And my friends' answers were all transportation alternatives. Go see them. They do training, they're good. So with that in mind, there's no shortage of ways that city residents can get involved, advocate for whatever policies they're interested in. But as a community board, how would you recommend we spend our time? What are the best tools that a community board has at its disposal to advocate for the kinds of things you're talking about? What would you suggest we do?
Yeah, I'll take this one too. So I guess other community boards throughout the city have been often will write letters of support for various changes, both in terms of if you want to see a better lane on Flatbush Avenue around the park, or a better connection down on Ocean, and so forth, writing what kind of like what you want to see. I know there was a proposal for the Ocean part a few years ago that hasn't been implemented to make a shared path for bicyclists and pedestrians. I think, I don't want to speak for your board, but like it sounds like from some of the concerns here that you are, you might want to consider asking for separated spaces for both of these modes so that it is safer for people walking and it's safer for people biking, instead of a shared path. But I think that really community boards have a great position to write letters of support asking DOT for specific changes. And I think that sometimes people, if there's a specific proposal, they can write, critiques or positives, negatives that are like, we like this part of it. We're glad you're making a space for bikes, but we really don't know where they're going to go at the end of it. Like, please make sure there's a connection into, this other location. And sometimes they're less specific and they're just like, this intersection is really, really dangerous. And we really, really, really want you to, address it for this, address that and make it safer for people walking or biking. Or if there's like a bus stop that's regularly blocked, try to like, you can ask to see if there's a way to, figure out ask DOT to study why it's blocked and move from there. I will say that it is, as someone who's been, active in this space for a few years, I'm not an expert on like DOT's timelines or anything, and I definitely wish they would move faster on changes that they say are sorely needed, especially in neighborhoods like ours that are kind of farther from the center of Manhattan, where changes seem to go a little quicker. But I do really think that, just using the voice of the community board to talk about what issues and changes and concerns you have is potentially a really good way to do that, to address DOT and the mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. The next person we had, I believe, is Barnabas.
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation. I really thought it was very thoughtful and very nicely done. I do have a question about how you guys approach advocacy for, I guess, a holistic design around traffic, around alternative modes of transportation, around optimizing everybody's life, not just bikers, not just pedestrians. Like taking that example of the bike lane on Parkside Avenue. I think ever since it's been put in, traffic has been so congested there that pollution is worse, traffic is worse. Bikers are not using it. I don't know why they're not using it, but I see just as many bikers still on the sidewalk and on the street as using the bike lane. Like, how can we come to the best use of the space that is best for everyone? And it's really making everyone's life safer and everyone's life easier. there's not enough space to have everything for everybody.
I can address this a little bit, and maybe some of my co-presenters can add a little bit to it. I really think that to the points about, and I definitely share the concerns about bicycles, especially bicycles on sidewalks. I think part of that is making sure that people feel like they have options that they can take safely. And I agree fully with your point that it is a challenge to figure out how do we balance things. I do think one major part of it is making sure that the people, like I was saying, people who would like to bike, people who would like to, take buses and so forth, can take those options. Reduces the demand of, pretty large cars per person on the streets, and that helps the streets move more slowly, or move more smoothly. I should say, not more slowly, better. And other things we can do, like loading zones and bus lanes and so forth. Those help, make sure that everyone knows where they're going. Loading zones make sure that cars aren't double parked and they can keep going. And so a lot of these interventions, I think, a lot of these street design things, they help the streets to move more smoothly. They help make sure that bicyclists feel, I can take the lane here. I can feel comfortable, going on the road. I don't feel like I need to be on the sidewalk or a car's going to hit me from behind. And I think that's how that's sort of the ideal goal. And I think there's also a very valid thing overall of when you're saying when you have competing priorities, you look at these and you say, well, we know so many people are going by vehicle, so many people are going by bicycle, so many people are going by bus, so many people by foot, and you say, how do we balance this? How do we make sure the streets are reflective of that? And I think we need to make sure. I think there's a lot of people who would like to bike or walk more, and the streets do not proportionally give them quite as much space as the reality of how people use the streets.
Thanks so much, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. I thought I saw another hand raised, but I don't see it now, and I'm back on my phone. Was there someone before Kendall that had their hand raised? If not, let's just go straight to Kendall.
Can I just ask or add one really quick thing just about the Parkside lane, super brief first, just to add on to that.
Sure.
I just want to say they still haven't really finished the west end of that lane yet. So I think that a lot of people are kind of confused that they can use it. Like there is a ramp and there's a lot of barriers and there was major sidewalk construction that was unrelated, I believe, for accessibility reasons at Park Circle. So I think it's only kind of recently been kind of introduced, but that there's not any marking from Park Circle to that lane unless you're kind of in the know and know that this is a new lane. So I think that's part of it. But one other super quick thing I was going to mention is there's also like nowhere for pedestrians or bikes to cross for quite some stretch. And a lot of people want to go to the parade grounds. And I always walk my bike when I'm on a sidewalk because I want to be really mindful of pedestrians. But I can see if people want to go to like the far side of the parade ground, there's not a really easy way to get there if they're already biking. And maybe adding a crossing would be able to, it would, could be a way to really reduce the wouldn't really change the traffic too much because there's already the slowdown, you already have the signal kind of on both sides of it, but would give people an opportunity to cross safely. Thanks so much. Sorry to jump in quick.
I agree. Thank you.
Well, I'll start there. I'm back and forth to the Tennis Center a lot, and the lack of a crossing from the bike lane, and the lack of the clear transition, plus the Coney Island Circle, reconstruction that occurred otherwise, sort of made a mess of things. Hopefully that's done now. So a handful of quick things. One is on the fatality and accident information. I assume you've done a mapping of that and really know where the hotspots are, and you're talking to DOT about what the priority areas are.
Yeah, so we worked with Councilmember Joseph's office actually earlier this year to help give a list of intersections that are particularly bad in kind of it. A lot of part of it is in CD9, part of it's in CD14 and CD17, and I think that sort of because our campaign is a little more focused generally a little further south than CD9, mostly because that's just where our group kind of has come together. We haven't looked throughout like the entire area in CD9 too aggressively on how where these places are, but we're happy to like work with you all, or
I
anyone
didn't
else
want
to
to
help
sort
work on
of
that too. Sorry.
geographically bounded, other than to say that mapping obviously is a powerful tool for identifying hotspots and getting DOT focused on where they need to come up with solutions. A couple other things. Also on mapping, DEP's green infrastructure program right now doesn't really extend into your catchment area, right? Are you in any conversations with DEP about plans to expand their target area to include that section? Because right now it's really stops, I think, really more in Crown Heights, barely, but just looking at their map.
I think we haven't explicitly been as a campaign in contact with DEP yet, mostly because we just we're still kind of a new campaigin. I will say that I think a lot of us have been in conversation with. I know I've been in conversation with CB14 about this for a long time. I live in CB14, and we're happy to help liaise with this as well, but just not.
Well, the same point with DOT that I made with DOT is that DEP targets areas of most need and opportunity, and so far that doesn't extend into the territory that you're focused on. On the heat island effect, there are a lot of innovations now in cool concrete that the city's been experimenting with that can be encouraged. There's a lot of work being done around that to lessen that situation, that impact, and that'd be worth taking a look at and understanding. Assemblymember Carroll has been very interested in that as one possibility to talk to. What else on the delivery thing? DOT had been experimenting with a off hours delivery program, and I don't know that it ever extended into our neck of the woods, or whether that is what's happened to that, whether it's stalled out or not. But they were really trying to get deliveries moved to off peak hours and provide sort of infrastructure and incentives to do that. And then finally, as you think about innovations at the street level, looking at on street EV charging. The DOT's got a very small scale pilot in a bunch, maybe a dozen locations elsewhere, and they should be close to evaluating and ready to sort of expand that. But for neighborhoods like ours that don't have driveways for the most part, being able to even think about getting an EV is complicated by not being able to charge it, and working out those issues. So now I'll leave that by saying that I live in the middle of PLG in Lefferts Manor, and we are restarting a block-wide sidewalk replacement effort among the 80 homes in our block. Have a planning meeting coming up on Sunday, and looking at all of these issues as how do we redesign sidewalks in our historic district for the next 20 years. And that's, low emission concrete, it's improving our tree pits. It's probably not bioswales, because from my conversations with DEP, they don't think that's probably a useful thing for us to integrate. But on-street charging of EVs is sort of part of that puzzle that we're hoping to put together in a way that sort of, again, of the 80 homes on our block, if we get 50, 60 of them to join in a combined sort of a sidewalk replacement project, that would be pretty exciting for us to work with. So.
Can I just ask if you have some details about this? I think we may have a couple of friends and neighbors in this neighborhood, and I want to make sure that they're they know what it is.
What's the question? I'm sorry, Jeff.
Details about the. You said you were having a planning thing on Sunday, or?
Yeah, but it's for my particular block.
For your block.
Maple between Bedford and Rogers.
Got it. Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to Jeffrey. Thank you so much to Liz. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you being here this evening. We know you're volunteers. We know you have 9 to 5s, and it means a lot that you took a few minutes out of your evening to speak to us today. Kendall, is there something you want to add?
Oh, one more, and sorry, because I sort of, work around all these issues in various ways, but looking at the city's new initiatives around containerization of waste is something you might want to look at where that fits into your looking at sidewalk impacts and the like. There's going to be more money coming in that direction for some pilots and the like, mostly around sort of enclosures as opposed to real containerization. But if you want to look at a containerization option like the commissioner mentioned today in Barcelona, look at undergroundrefuse.com as a U.S. company that has the rights to that European system. And I'm working with them to introduce that into New York.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Transportation Alternatives just to close out. See John and Liz have their hand raised, and thank you again for coming this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. And all I wanted to say was we're super open to everything that's been talked about tonight. And to the holistic point that someone brought up, we are for our entire neighborhood and for all of these solutions. We're trying to do something holistic as well. So I think that dovetails pretty nice. And we want everybody in our community and adjacent to our community to be involved. So it's flatbushstreetsforpeople.com. And it's flatbushstreetsforpeople@gmail.com. We're real people. Just email us. We will answer the email. We'll be on Twitter. We're everywhere. So we really want to work with you and have you work with us. We are just part of the community. So thank you guys so much for having us. We meet every Tuesday. It's kind of fun. Every other Tuesday, 8 to 9. But flatbushstreetsforpeople.com, flatbushstreetsforpeople@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I was just gonna also mention that our, because it's an every other week schedule, it's a little hard to keep up with, but we do announce our meetings on Twitter and Instagram, and also, if you email us, we'll definitely, tell you when the next one is. Our next meeting is, in fact, next Tuesday, May 17th, if anyone wants to join on Zoom at 8 p.m. And just, wanted to, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to present, and if there's any other, if there's anything we can help the board with reaching out to DOT and trying to address some of the problem areas that you've all mentioned today, or anything else we can help, we're around, and Christian has our contact information, and we'd be absolutely just very happy to help out however we can. So thank you again.
Thank you, Liz. And the feeling is mutual. We're at your disposal for anything you may need. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. We're going to go into public discussion now. If you have other things, of course, you're free to drop off as well. But thank you again for speaking to us this evening. And with that being said, we'll jump into the next agenda item, which is 15 minutes of public discussion. I open up the floor to folks on the call. Martina, thank you for raising your hand. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Actually, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to mention something that actually Teresa here has a lot more information on that I thought she would be able to tell everyone about, which is that at 40, 50, and 54 Crown Street, there has, quite a while ago, there had been this toxic dumping from a dry cleaners. And then I followed up with Dante, and he had spoken to the DEP, and they said that as long as nobody's building there, it's not an environmental problem, and that yes, it does need remediation, but because there's no building, it doesn't need remediation yet. However, about a week ago or so, and I guess Teresa has more detail, actually the developers, who were not supposed to do anything at all, went in there with forklifts and so on, and started throwing dirt around and moving dirt and causing dust in the air, which was obviously not a healthy idea, besides it not being legal. So I just don't know what we can do as an environmental committee. But I just wanted everyone to be aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. I want to make sure I understood well. So you said that Dante spoke to DEP. DEP said that there may be toxic items in that area, but
Yes,
the developer or the construction is not taking place. There's no enforcement that's needed. But as of the last week,
exactly.
the developer or the construction company started to throw some dirt around, seemingly to begin construction. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Nicola, so you have your hand raised.
Good evening, everyone. What I wanted to bring, I think the last speaker brought the system, because in my block there is two construction going, and what people are experiencing is a proliferation of rats. A lot of rats are coming in, so a lot of people are calling, being concerned, seeing so many rats around. So that's one of the problem. Yeah, so that's why I wanted to bring that to the attention of the medical committee. I don't know. I know there's been some Rat Academy announcement, but this is something probably we have to pay a lot more attention, especially in the area where there's construction going around. That's the point I want to bring. And I have a question regarding the commercial corridor for from Empire to Parkside, mostly on the west side. Usually by the middle of the week, that area is always very, very dirty. And I don't think the merchant or the business in the area is spending enough time to keep the front of their store clean. So because I work, I'm there almost every day as I take my ride from up to the Lincoln Avenue entrance to the park. I usually walk that strip, so this is something. There will be one, I'll come on Monday, it's clean, and 2-3 days later, it's all dirty again. So it's not something that's being done on a consistent basis to keep it clean. I know some of the approaches we're trying to do is to help for that. Okay, so that's one point. And the other question is, the other intervention I'd like to do, this presentation from Transportation Alternative, I think we should ask them to come back to the Transportation Committee also. I don't know if it's possible to do this particular season, probably next year, but I think this should be repeated and bring them back to the Transportation Committee also within CB9.
Thank you, Nicola. I think those are really great points that you bring up. And one thing that the CB9 Fair is going to do is going to knock down those silos and bring all the committees together. That's something that I'm also very interested in doing, is knocking down silos and helping committees work together. You mentioned the enforcement of the curbs and the sidewalks in front of businesses. That's something that we included in our letter to the council members, that we were asking PSNY to enforce the existing laws, not just for their sidewalk, but 18 inches away from the curb, to make sure that those areas are clean for businesses and residences. I want to go to Teresa really quick, and I also just would like our committee to start reflecting on what are going to be our priorities for next year. We're going to have one more meeting in June, and then we're going to break until summer. We're going to come together again in September. And there's a number of issues. I think we did a good job this year in terms of working on a couple of priorities, but we can tell that there's a number of issues in our district that we can sink our teeth into and perhaps organize around. Transportation Alternatives is here today. They have their campaign. Nicola mentioned the problem of rats. Rats is something easy that I think no matter where you live, what part of the neighborhood, people want to get rid of rats in the streets. And this issue with the possible dumping, possible starting of construction at 54 Crown Street where there's toxic materials. There's a number of things that our committee can organize around and push next year. So as we're having these conversations, please start to think about what may be of interest to you and what you're passionate about and where you think we can find consensus. Teresa?
Hello. Just to, I sent that report to you all today about the, I don't know if you read it. It's a 70-page report on the site, 54 Crown that borders Franklin and Montgomery. That large site is they were excavating in that area today, this week, trying to put in a foundation attempt. They had a permit for a 17-story building, when in fact that area is not zoned. It's only zoned for 5, 6, possibly 7 if it's a corner property. And Alicia Boyd, LaShawn, and Michael brought it to the where with Judge Bodie, who I misspelled the name in the email I sent you. I hope you all are going to read that document, because there was testing done on that site, and it's quite bad, that site, with what has happened there in the past. I'm not an investigative environmentalist, but you should all read that report, and it'll be obvious why digging up that area without proper protections in place is so bad for that area, which borders, there's a college, there's a garden, there's a school, there's a Ebbets Field, there's the playground, Jackie Robinson Playground, Jackie Robinson High School, Ebbets Field Middle School are all in that area, and it's very alarming. There's other developments in this area that are happening, and there doesn't seem to be any, like the Firestone is being like knocked down right now this week. And, it's not something you could really sit on. Oh yeah, well wait, make it a priority. It's happening right now, as well as the Associated, was knocked down. And I was looking on some environmental toxicity sites and maps, and that site is, I couldn't believe, there's a little line that they put when a toxin has been identified in an area, like maybe a underground oil spill, something like that had so many arrows and lines. It was like a tornado around the Associated site on Nostrand Avenue. The Firestone, I don't know what's going on there. It doesn't seem like they're mitigating properly for asbestos and lead, and they're just running everything into the ground there's some water pouring out of there. It's bad news, the funeral home as well. And I really don't know what I could do about it besides make reports as a citizen. But when you report something, it's like 45 days until they take care of it. And it's dangerous for this community,
Thanks, Teresa.
So I'm just looking for help and support, and trying to figure out what we should do as a committee.
Yeah, no, totally understand. Quick clarifying question. Are there things that are being dumped on that site right now?
Well, it's not, there is some dumping going on there, but not that much. I mean, the issue is that the soil, all this is contained in the soil, right? All this past dumping, read that report and you'll see there's been environmental testing, there's been studies, a group, it's 70 pages long. It's very revealing.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
They started digging it up. They were digging it up. They were digging a giant hole. All the dirt, everything's blowing. I was asked to go over there and see what was happening because I live so close by some of my other neighbors, and I did, and I was really shocked. And the permit they had turned out to be illegal, and it was shut down by the judge, and they had to they pushed the dirt back, but all the dirt has been
I just want to know if there's dumping taking place right now, and I think you clarified that, which is helpful.
There is, but not. I mean, it's what's already been dumped there that's in the soil already.
I just want us to separate the issues, which are that originally, when this was brought to our attention, we understood that there was dumping of toxic. That is not happening, but the soil is already toxic and there's already toxic material on the land, and that is now being excavated, which is causing a problem, that's equally problematic. We just have to be careful about clarifying issues so that Martina, her hand is raised. Nicola was there before?
I am muted. I was muted. It's not me.
Okay. So we're gonna go to Martina and then Corazon, and then we're gonna end there.
And then, Charlita, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm on the phone, so I don't know how to raise my hand. But if I could just join the queue, let me know when I can speak.
Sure. Thank you for joining, Charlita. You can speak after Corazon, and then we'll end after you.
Thank you.
Martina. Okay, Martina, we'll come back to you. Corazon?
Hi, thank you. Hello, all. Good evening. I just wanted to find out, where can I find the report that the person that was speaking before me, the 70-page? I was really interested in trying to find out more and see what ways I could help.
Sure. Thank you. Great question. I can send it to you after this meeting. Teresa, I start to go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Teresa, thank you for sending it. And the information you sent in the email today was super. So I'll send that to you.
I want to add one thing quick. This is for Nicola, because I know he's on the committee for the event. I saw $1,000 budget item for bathrooms there, but I just want to point out that you could save $1,000 because right across the street is the Brooklyn Museum with a huge amount of free public bathrooms, very nice bathrooms. So you could save $1,000. So I just wanted to quickly let you know, because that's been on the tip of my tongue all night. Thank you.
Thank you for raising it, Teresa. That could save money. Martina, is there something that you wanted to add?
Yes, actually, there's something in addition to all of this, which is, can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. Which is that the Prospect Park Alliance, the presentation that they gave at CB9, I don't know when it was, a couple weeks ago, we didn't really get a chance to really ask questions and interact with them. And there's going to be quite a bit of building and construction and changing the landscaping of the Vale area, the 27 acres. And, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's not, but I would like to find out how many trees are going to be knocked down, if they're old mother trees, what are they going to be replanting it with? Because all of you probably know about the neonicotinoids that are in virtually all inedible plants and trees. So to replant a whole area that's old and well established and does not have those pesticides, with new beautiful plants that are infused throughout the plant with these pesticides, and that also get into the ground water as well and last about 7 years. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best idea for the birds, the bees, the other pollinators. And I'm just wondering, how do we have an actual engaging conversation with the Alliance and also with each other to discuss this more? Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. Thank you so much. I think that it's a really great point, and Prospect Park is the jewel of our neighborhood. Khalid, do you think you would be able to put in touch with the person from Prospect Park Alliance who presented at the last general board meeting so that Martina could get more information?
Yes, that's no problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to go to Charlie. We're going to end there.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for sending that report around. As you mentioned, it was 70 pages, and I didn't get a chance to read it before this meeting. But my question, and maybe it's answered in the 70-page opinion by Judge Brody, is what it takes to have a place declared a Superfund site. I don't know if the material, the dry cleaning chemicals that are in the soil are, you know, if they reach the level, whatever the level is that constitutes, you know, a Superfund, but maybe that's a thing to be done. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's a really good point. And I didn't see any references to Superfund. I imagine we could quickly find that out just by searching the document and searching for that term in the document. But Teresa, I know you're more familiar with the document than many of us. Do you have a sense if that's referenced in there?
Well, I just got the document a couple days ago, and I forwarded it immediately to you guys. So I didn't read the whole thing. I read a lot of it, and I was surprised. It's not a decision by Judge Brody. It's just like an investigation from an organization that's not affiliated, like an independent organization based in New Jersey that does this sort of work. And I don't, a Superfund site would be great, but I don't think that can be declared a Superfund site like Gowanus. There's this thing that they do where they like put this thing called a bubble in sites like that oftentimes. That's what a friend of mine told me who works for the state. Like they put like this bubble thing in the bottom, like apparently they did this on the site in East New York on Atlantic Avenue that's being developed now, where it protects. I don't know what they're going to do. The developers should do something, but it's just, I guess my point is that site and other sites, they're being dug up and things are flowing into the air and into the waterways and into our bodies. And this neighborhood that I live in is particularly hard hit. We're surrounded by these sites. And I really don't know what to do about it. You know, it's alarming and it's serious, and it's serious for our children who are going to be affected by these chemicals and toxic environment. So I don't know. It seems to be very like whatever, you know, like Associated. They had no. I didn't see the beginning of it because I was out of town, but I saw the end of it when they were touring down that building. There was no mitigation. There was so much dust in the air. It was bothering my eyes and my lungs just from walking over there. You know, I put on my mask and I left. You know, a fence blew down when I was over there. It was crazy. So there was just dumpsters being filled with dirt flying everywhere. Usually they have some form of mitigation, like water being poured while they're, you know, moving stuff. You don't know what's in that. That site is so, you just, I mean, I'm new to this, you know, I'm just investigating because I'm on this committee and trying to help my neighbors, you know, so I'm looking for help and trying my best to figure it all out, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. I want to be mindful of our norms and give others a chance to speak who I apologize. Barnabas did have their hand up earlier and I neglected to call on Barnabas, but then we are going to end there. Barnabas?
No worries. I just wanted to say with respect to that report, maybe it should also be shared with the ULURP committee, especially insofar as, you know, if they're violating permits or lack of doing work without permit.
That's a great
what that I would want to know.
They had a permit, but it wasn't a proper permit. It was not correct, and it was rescinded.
Yeah,
They made.
but I think I should know about the activity or the violations.
Khalid, who is the chair of the ULURP committee again?
That's Pat Moses.
Pat Moses. Okay. Teresa, can you send the report to Pat Moses?
Yeah. I don't have her email, I don't think. I don't know if I have her email, but
If you don't have your email, can you email the district office and Khalid or someone else can provide it to you?
Khalid, do you have that?
I'm sorry, Teresa. If I don't know if I have the report, and I can't access my office email right now, but I will acquire from you. And in terms of, I can forward it to Miss Moses, but in terms of sharing her contact information, I have to ask her for her permission first, and then I can follow up with that for you.
Yeah, I might even have it from when she used to be on this committee, remember?
Yes, she did. Yes, and if you have her contact information, of course, you can definitely reach out to her. But you know, if I'm going to share it, I have to request her permission first.
Thank you. All right, so I think there's a lot of anxiety around this issue. There's a lot of concern, and you're right, it's an environmental health issue, and it's something we need to address. I don't think this evening is the day that we're going to be able to organize around it. We had a presentation earlier and a rather full agenda, but I would like to put this on the agenda and devote an actual agenda point to this topic next month so that we can see if there's action that we can take around here. And I am also happy to engage with the committee via email over the next couple of weeks. If there are ideas that you think would be helpful, then you can share it via email and we can have that conversation offline electronically. We're going to move to the last agenda item, which is any other business. Typically, any other business is really something that if you can't sleep tonight because it's just going to keep you up at night and you really have to get this question or comment off your chest, then this is the time to ask it. We have just 10 minutes left, so I want to be mindful of that. Usually we don't have any other business to discuss. I will just say, reverting back to what I mentioned earlier, that we did get this grant from the Citizens Committee, and we committed to spending it to activate a green space, and then on a fair, and then on trash receptacles. I'm happy to take any questions on that grant because I know it's been since January that we last talked about it. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
This is Charlita. So what is your plan for how to go about like spending it and, you know, whatever processes around that are and the priorities, et cetera?
Sure. So there's a green space that is being used as essentially a dumping site that I would like to purchase plants and flowers, maybe even a tree and a tree guard to activate that green space and then hopefully prevent some of the litter that's covering that green space, taking up that green space. I would like to use some of the money for that. I estimate that that would be about $500. And then we have $2,000 left. The reporting requirements in terms of what we can spend it on are pretty strict. Admittedly, I just found out on Monday morning that we had got the grant and I haven't got a chance to really go through all the reporting requirements, but my understanding is we have to, for the most part, stick to what we had intended to use the money for, which is activating the green space, the trash receptacles, and also the fair.
Thanks. And we can put it on the agenda item for next time because it's 8:18. But when you activate a green space, is there anything? What are the protections around it that protect the space? Because you could spend $500 to beautify it, and then they just continue to do what they were doing before you were beautifying the space.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. Thank you. So I went to a workshop about a month ago at Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and one thing we talked about, it was all about greening your block. And one thing we talked about is the real importance of tree guards. It's not a perfect solution, but taking a space that's essentially just a dirt patch and then putting a tree guard around it is the first step in terms of showing that there's care and thought going into that space. I think that putting a tree guard up and then planting in that space, whether it's a tree or flowers, would go a long way. I can send a picture after when we get offline of what the green space has looked like in the past. It's really just it's not nice. It's covered with trash. So I imagine if flowers are there and a tree guard is there, then that would help. Yeah, we also talked in this workshop about do-it-yourself signs, asking folks to be mindful of that space, whether it's with their dog that's doing their business or other areas. But those sorts of do-it-yourself signs are really helpful. But you bring up a great point, which is that part of it is this is something that can happen even with a green space that's activated. There still may be litter there, and there still may be trash. So it's something that I think we should definitely talk through more next month. And I thank you for raising it.
No, I think those sound like good ideas to begin with. The whole broken windows theory, right? So.
Okay, Martina.
Hi, I'm just curious, where is the green space going to be located?
Clarkson and Bedford.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll send a picture to the whole committee after this of what the space looks like. So you have it. Other questions about the grant? Okay, so I would just, if there's no further questions, Nicola, I'm sorry, is that about the grant? I think you're on mute.
Ask to make sure if we're going to have everybody represented within the year with a committee, if they get an invitation to be part of the fair. So that's one way we can make sure we have a lot of vendors there. So if you review all the presenters throughout the year, I think every committee should just reach out to them to see if they want to be part of the fair. So I'm hoping transportation alternative will be one of them.
There you go. Consider that your invitation, Liz, John, and Jeff. In the last few minutes, it always comes through. All right. Well, I think that's it. I think we can adjourn the meeting. For the committee, please keep an eye out on your emails over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to continue to speak to Dante about trash receptacles, and if the community board is able to pay for some of them, then I think using the funds that we got this grant to help contribute to CB9's funds would be a useful way that would be aligned with the intention of the grant. But I don't know if CB9 is going to have that funding. So Dante and I talked about a week ago, and I said that I would follow up with him the last week of May. So particularly around the last week of May or so, please keep an eye out on your emails. We may have to have some discussions electronically if there's anything that changes substantially there. Kendall?
It's Kendall. I guess I would suggest waiting until the council and the administration settle on the budget in early June to know how many that potentially could be sort of bumped up significantly in the final budget.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the budget will be the budget will come through. What is it, Kendall? June 30th?
Well, it's got to be done by June 30th, but June 15th is usually the target. So.
Okay. That's a really gret point. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. I also have to go through the reporting requirements a little bit.
Yes, I wouldn't spend our money until we know what the council's negotiated. So.
Yeah, especially because our money is pennies compared to what the council is going to get. Yeah. What the council is going to get and what CB9 already has, right, Khalid?
That's right.
All right. Cool. So no, that's a great point. I'll have to balance that as well with any deadlines that I have to report back to Citizens Committee. Like I said, I'm sorry I haven't gone through the reporting just yet, but I will communicate with the committee electronically over the next couple of weeks if there's anything significant that needs to be discussed or decided in regards to the grant. All right, and with that, it's 8:24. Thank you, everybody, for your time. The meeting is adjourned. I hope you have a good evening. Thank you for your participation, and thanks again to Transportation Alternatives.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.